This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read and recorded by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, October 2006. An Astral Onion by Elia Wilkinson Peedy. When Tig Braddock came to Nora Finnegan, he was red-headed and freckled, and, truth to tell, he remained with these features to the end of his life, a life prolonged by a lucky, if somewhat improbable incident, as you shall hear. Tig had shuffled off his parents, as saurians of some sorts do their skins. During the temporary absence from home of his mother, who was at the Bridewell, and the more extended vacation of his father, who, like Villon, loved the open road and the life of it, Tig, who was not a well-domesticated animal, wandered away. The Humane Society never heard of him, the neighbors did not miss him, and the law took no cognizance of this detached citizen, this lost Pleiad. Tig would have sunk into that melancholy which is attendant upon hunger, the only form of despair which babyhood knows, if he had not wandered across the path of Nora Finnegan. Now Nora shone with steady brightness in her orbit, and no sooner had Tig entered her atmosphere than he was warmed and comforted. Hunger could not live where Nora was. The basement room where she kept house was redolent with savory smells, and in the stove in her front room, which was also her bedroom, there was a bright fire glowing when fire was needed. Nora went out washing for a living, but she was not a poor washerwoman, not at all. She was a washerwoman triumphant. She had perfect health, an enormous frame, an abounding enthusiasm for life, and a rich abundance of professional pride. She believed herself to be the best washer of white clothes she had ever had the pleasure of knowing, and the value placed upon her services, and her long connection with certain families with large weekly washings, bore out this estimate of herself, an estimate which she never endeavored to conceal. Nora had buried 2 husbands without being unduly depressed by the fact. The first husband had been a disappointment, and Nora winked at Providence when an accident in a tunnel carried him off, that is to say, carried the husband off. The second husband was not so much of a disappointment as a surprise. He developed ability of a literary order, and wrote songs which sold and made him a small fortune. Then he ran away with another woman. The woman spent his fortune, drove him to dissipation, and when he was dying he came back to Nora, who received him cordially, attended him to the end, and cheered his last hours by singing his own songs to him. Then she raised a headstone recounting his virtues, which were quite numerous, and refraining from any reference to those peculiarities which had caused him to be such a surprise. Only one actual chagrin had ever nibbled at the sound heart of Nora Finnegan, a cruel chagrin with long white teeth, such as rodents have. She had never held a child to her breast, nor laughed in its eyes, never bathed the pink form of a little son or daughter, never felt a tugging of little hands at her voluminous calico skirts. Nora had burnt many candles before the statue of the Blessed Virgin without remedying this deplorable condition. She had sent up unavailing prayers, and had, at times, wept hot tears of longing and loneliness. Sometimes in her sleep she dreamed that a wee form, warm and exquisitely soft, had pressed against her firm body, and that a hand with tiniest pink nails crept within her bosom. But as she reached out to snatch this delicious little creature closer, she woke to realize a barren woman's grief, and turned herself in anguish on her lonely pillow. So when Tig came along, accompanied by 2 curs who had faithfully followed him from his home, and when she learned the details of his story, she took him in, curs and all, and having bathed
Sample complete. Ready to continue?